Welcome to episode 217. 17 meaning March 17, the day of this recording. Just wanted to share that.
Yes.
Of the Shared Security Show. And joining me this week are two Irish lads, co-hosts Scott Wright and Kevin Johnson. Happy St. Patrick's Day. You can see we're all wearing green in celebration of that. I'm not wearing green because I have a green screen behind me, so I would be transparent.
You wouldn't
all
see
you would
us.
see is my head.
But I want to be very clear. You could have left off the background, just left the green screen, and then been green. But no,
I know I should have done that. But
I have a green screen behind me as well. But what I've done is I've broadcast exactly what's always behind me onto the green screen just to throw people off.
Yeah,
that's right. Well, welcome to the show. Doing things a little bit different today. We have a main topic, and then we have our Aware Much segment. So this topic actually was suggested by one of our listeners, Andy Murphy from the Secure Dad podcast. If you haven't checked out the Secure Dad podcast, just a plug out to him. He has a great show. Highly recommend it. But he had suggested he had some questions about location tracking apps and which ones sell your data.
All of them.
Well, we'll get to that. And it is an interesting question because, I mean, we all know location tracking apps are very popular. I mean, we've talked about them on the show before. We talked about Life 360. I mean, we pretty much did a whole episode on them. We talked about what Apple has, Google. There's tons of third-party apps that do this now because, frankly, we all want to know where our kids are when it comes down to it, right?
And I'll be honest, it's not even just that. Like,
no, it's more than that.
My wife and I use it quite often. My office is about, if there's no traffic, it's about 20 minutes from my house to my office. And very often, Denise will come into the office, one, because, she owns the business, but two, like, we'll meet on this side of the bridge. There's a major bridge in that 20-minute drive. My ride home last night was over an hour.
Jeez.
Right? And so very often what we'll do is she'll say to me, hey, let's meet at Kim's Korean, which is the amazing Korean barbecue across the street. And if I just drive over there and expect her to be there in 20 minutes, I may be there an hour and a half before she shows up.
Wow.
So we use the location app so that I can wrap up what I'm working on and meet her there so she's not waiting, I'm not waiting. There's lots of legitimate reasons for using it.
Absolutely. More than just stalking people. Yes. Right. And I completely agree with you. This is definitely not a bash on location tracking apps. They are extremely valuable. It's great technology. But what is concerning is, your location data, how that it could potentially be sold, how other information about you, how you use the application, all of these, all this metadata that these apps collect can be used by third parties. And a lot of this comes back to what is disclosed or maybe not disclosed in privacy policies in terms of service, at, the things that we all read when we install an application, right?
I do.
Because we have time, yeah.
That's right.
I read more of them than I'd like to admit.
Yeah. Well, we're the exception because we're on a privacy podcast, but
that might have something to do with it.
Maybe just a little bit. But so what I did here was I took the top 3 location tracking apps in the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store, and I wanted to see for myself what do they do with your data. Now, this was not a technical evaluation, so I did not, install the app like back in the day when I was a pen tester and, look at the traffic and see where it goes. And I did not spend the time to do that. But what I did do was I looked to see, first of all, was there a privacy policy? Who makes the application? What do they disclose to their users about what is shared? And there were some surprising things that I had found. And I'm just going to share that data with all of you. And then you can kind of make your own decision of whether or not this is an app that you want to use. If you're comfortable with that, maybe you would want to use another application, or, frankly, a lot of people will just accept that risk and use the app. And there's nothing wrong with that either. That is, of course, your choice. But so let's get into it. The first one, so first of all, I put into the App Store search location tracking, both in the Google Play Store as well as in the Apple App Store, just so we have a consistent search on both OSs. And the number one app on both app stores is something called Phone Tracker by Number. And what's interesting about it is that on Android, it takes you to a website, onelocator.com. And on iOS, the developer site, it goes to locatorprivacy.com. They are two different sites, but very similar in terms of design. Now, I can't show you a screenshot here. We'll have links in the show notes, of course, of what that looks like. But honestly, it looks like something like a GeoCities site, something that like a 5-year-old would have developed, to be completely honest.
Why are we making fun of GeoCities?
No, I had a GeoCities site.
Yeah.
We talked about this. I'm okay with that. But for the number one app in the app stores, it looked really shady. I will be completely honest. And I don't know if you guys had a chance to take a look at those sites.
It looked shady.
I don't know.
I'm going to ask though, we're not going to know the answer, but okay, so we say number one app, but is it number one because people are actually using it, or is it number one because of those click farms?
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say,
and that could be another. You're right.
I'm not saying that's what's happening there because I don't know, but I've got to believe that if it really was the number one because of usage, they'd have enough money to hire a web designer.
Well, that is interesting, and maybe that's another topic for another show, because there is the whole thing of how can I get my app highest in the list. It's just like how they do it with websites, black SEO as it used to be called, right?
Jeez, the number of emails I get for SEO requests.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy.
When I'm feeling snippy, I respond to them and say to them, I did a Google search for your name and you're not number one. Why aren't you using your own service?
Yeah.
But
so a little bit about this app. So what's interesting in Google Play, if you click the link to the privacy policy, well, there is no link. There is no privacy policy linked within Google Play, which I believe is actually a violation of Google's developer terms, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a big issue right there. And when you go to their websites, there just isn't anything on privacy.
The phone tracker one actually has a big prominent privacy policy on its website.
Yes, it does. Yeah. Right. That's the iOS version.
Yes.
It does. Yep. Yeah. So the iOS version has that different website, has a privacy policy. They do say they serve you ads based on your location data. So you could take that to mean that a third party is getting your location data to serve you ads.
Now, if it means anything, if you rate the intrusiveness of a website by how many ad trackers it actually has on the website, my uBlock Origin only shows one for each of those sites. Like usually you'd see 15 or 35 or something, right, on a big free tracker site.
Yep. Very, very interesting. And then there are some just, bad English. I think it says location information will only be sent to the persons you select and after your approval. And then it does say that Friend Locator Inc., and I think that is the name of the company, uses Google AdMob to display ads on the applications. So you've probably seen that before on apps where there's like a little banner ad that pops that's on the bottom as you use the app. So Google may get your device ID, other types of things, just like Google would by using that application to, of course, serve you more ads. And then they have in their policy that if you want to opt out of Google's interest-based ads, there is a way that you can do that on your Android phone. I think it's just a a setting, Kevin, you probably know, right? To turn off Google Ads.
And I can't remember the name of it. Like it's a specific name thing. The thing that I've always found interesting is how often you look at the privacy policy for these companies that make the claim they're not selling. And then they acknowledge in the privacy policy that, well, they're not selling, but they're interacting with all of these organizations that do. So they are technically being honest. It's technically true. We know that technically true is the best form of true. I don't remember where that's a quote from, but that is always that weasel word, right? Like, I don't sell your data, but I use this service over here and they may, and you have to go talk to them if they do.
It's shady. It's so shady.
And oh, by the way, they're paying me to use that service, which is in fact me selling your data, just not quite, right? We're being pedantic to get away with the rules.
That's right.
I don't like that.
Yeah. So that leads us to the number 2 app on both app stores, which is Life 360, which we have covered on the show. Now, Life 360 has made some changes because they were under a lot of heat after, not because we talked about it, but there was
totally
a great article that did a lot more research on how they sell your data to these third parties. And there was actually an option in the app that you could turn that off. So they've modified their privacy policy recently to talk about how they they actually say they don't sell your data, but you can opt out from some of it. So they're still giving away some of your data. Yeah. And I was a little shocked to see there's a third-party company called Cubic. I think that's how you pronounce it. Yeah. And they link to Cubic's site, which has a list of their trusted partners. And I couldn't believe, I was just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. Like, I could not believe how many of these companies are getting some of that data from Life 360. Yeah. But to your point, Kevin, they're kind of like that data broker, right? And Life 360 even says, well, if you're not happy with this, go to Cubic's site and look at their privacy policy. And it's almost like a chain of privacy policies that you have to look at to see what happened to your
shell
data.
companies, privacy policies.
Yeah. So I thought that was a little interesting, and their wording specifically, they say you can opt out through the do not sell my private information or my personal information in the app, but they do disclose, they say, even if you do opt out, it will continue to collect your device location, movement data, and then share that data with like the people you are tracking, right? Like your kids. Mm-hmm. And then with third parties that need to support that data. So some of that could be Cubic companies and things like that. But they don't share data about you with third-party partners for their own advertising or other commercial purposes. They just found a different way, essentially, to use that data. Very interesting.
Yeah, really.
I'll continue to stay. If organizations want to sell the data, that is a business model, right? And we have to determine whether we are okay with that.
That's right.
The biggest thing I think that people need to remember is that when they get that email that says, hey, our privacy policy is changing, go read it. But more than read it, think about what it is actually saying. This is a total tangent, but I feel like it's related. I just saw this meme yesterday, and it's like, my favorite number is, and it's like this number that's like 12 digits long. And then it says, I bet you didn't even really read that number and notice that I put a letter there. No, I didn't actually put a letter there, but you went and looked, right? And I read it. And I'll admit, I hadn't really read the number because it wasn't important. And then I did go back and look to see the letter they had snuck in there. So I fell for it exactly. But I read it. I read the meme right after you sent the topics for today. Mm-hmm. And I immediately thought, man, this is a privacy policy. Totally
good analogy.
Subsection 8A says this, but you go there and it just bounces you all over the place.
So I have a question for both of you guys. Think about it in terms, we've talked about the privacy policy, and there's some shady sort of data sharing arrangements perhaps, right? That you got to read the fine print, see what they actually say they will do. But what's the difference, do you think, between the risks around that sharing model or privacy requirements, privacy policy, and the risks of that site getting hacked and your data being exfiltrated or exposed that way?
I think they are, if I may, Tom, I think they're both risks. If I was thinking about it, and I'm gonna be clear, I'm doing this off the cuff. I haven't really, like, this wasn't a prepped question, so bear with me. But in my head, the way I see it is you've got two options. Okay, so if they share my data with a company, they sell the data, whatever, they sell it to a company that is going to use it, compared to the risk of the original site getting hacked and a bad person getting access to it. I think it's a really easy risk measurement. The risk of the site being hacked and a bad person using the data is potentially very high, right?
Yeah.
Depends on the security, depends on this, depends on that. But yes, probably a high risk on the internet here, March 17th, 2022. But the risk of my data being used in a way I don't like, in the scenario where they sold my data to a company that is explicitly going to do something with it, that is not a risk. It's a guarantee.
Right. Certain.
So, yeah, it's a certainty. So, which is a risk, just because I can just totally see the comments now. Well, Kevin doesn't understand what risk means. I like, when we measure it, okay, this one has like a 90% chance of happening. Yeah. This one has 100%.
Yeah. That's a great observation. I think that's good.
So I think it's a certainty, but that brings it back to the idea of, look at me, right? I've said this many times. I stand by this statement. You want to know where I am? Ask me. Right? Like, I've decided years ago that I'm going to act as if I have no privacy. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not the person that says, well, we don't need privacy if we weren't doing anything wrong. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that I know my data is out there. My social security number's been compromised multiple times. My credit card's been compromised multiple times. My data was stolen. I was in the OPM breach. Like, every bit of my information is available on the internet. So if I live my life as if it's all available on the internet, because it is, then I'm not going to be screwed when that piece of data I didn't think about gets displayed, right? So yeah, I'm okay with them selling my data. I'm not okay with them misleading people into believing they're not gonna, right? So yeah.
Good point.
So imagine this scenario. You're out of the office unexpectedly, and a colleague pings you because they need access to some system you have credentials for. Now, our listeners would never send passwords over email or Slack, right? But what about your coworkers? How many organizations out there are sending logins back and forth in plain text? Worse yet, how many just store all of their logins on a shared spreadsheet? We all know that human errors are the biggest threat to your organization's security. But did you know that weak or stolen passwords account for over 80% of all data breaches? Now, there are tools out there that can allow you to share credentials, set access permissions, and monitor the dark web for stolen logins. And Keeper Security's enterprise password management platform does just that. Keeper locks down logins, payment cards, confidential documents, API keys, and database passwords in a patented zero-knowledge encrypted vault. And it takes less than an hour to deploy across your organization. Sign up for a Keeper free trial for your organization today and get a free 3-year personal plan. Stop sharing emails and spreadsheets with the keys to the kingdom. Get started by visiting keepersecurity.com/shared security. So the number 3 app on Android is an app called Glympse, and they sounds like they have a way to opt out. I don't know if it's within the app or not because I didn't install the app, but they do state that we may share your contact information with third parties, but only if you have indicated to us that you wish to receive information from such parties. So who are such parties? I guess is
and why
the
would I want
open
their
question
information?
there. Exactly. So again, it goes into the vagueness, right? That sometimes they put into these privacy policies. Of course, they're disclosing it to you, but sometimes they're not disclosing who is getting that information. And then on the iOS side, the number 3 app is My Family Find Friends Phone. Again, these
Great
names.
Great
Yeah,
names.
I don't know where they're getting these names from.
Sounds legit. Sounds reputable.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they have a very detailed privacy policy with a lot of information. They do say that they share some data with, because your data is stored in Firebase database. And so there is some Firebase analytics that seem to be enabled by default within the app. And this says you can disable those. They don't say what is specifically stored in that database. Um, and then Facebook Analytics is also used in that app, even though they've disabled the location sharing and tracking of that, but there is still some data that is going to Facebook, apparently. So
interesting. I while we were talking, I went to domain tools and looked up where the domains are registered. Right, so the phone tracker ones we talked about, they're just GoDaddy private domains or whatever. You can't really tell, but this one is registered frenzy.tech is the company, right? And it's registered in Holland, in Amsterdam. So it's interesting that it's sort of international domain.
Yeah. So really the bottom line here is that, I mean, all of these apps share some type of data with third parties. It's just how they disclose that to you. And they all vary in terms of how you can opt out of some of these things. But even if you opt out, ultimately, there is some data that may or may not be location data, but there is some data that is eventually ending up in some third party for some purpose. And so our advice is really, first, read the privacy policy, number one, if they have one. If they don't have one, that should be a pretty big warning sign to you and is probably violating an app store policy, because I know Apple and Google both have really been enforcing a lot more rules on developers. And I know for a fact of having a privacy policy has to be one of those requirements. So look out for that. And ultimately, you'll have to make your own decision, right? Whether or not you want to use that app. Does that fit into your risk profile? We've talked about many times on the show. But make that decision for yourself. And like I said, we love location tracking apps, but there is things you have to consider when it comes to your privacy. So with that, let's go into our next segment, which is Aware Much?
Yes, indeed, Tom. This segment is brought to you by ClickArmor, the security awareness platform that helps your employees avoid phishing attacks in just 3 minutes per week. Can you believe that? I'll tell you more about that in a minute.
That's not a lot of time. 3 minutes.
Imagine the things that take longer than that, right? So who doesn't want a free Chick-fil-A? Sorry, Chick-fil-A? I don't know how you say it.
He's Canadian.
I'm Canadian.
They don't have that in
Canadian. Wait,
I like Chick-fil-A.
I would expect you to be able to pronounce. I was going to say, I didn't expect you to be able to pronounce Chick-fil-A well.
Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, just where the emphasis is. Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
So, anyway. Who doesn't want Chick-fil-A or Olive Garden? Apparently, they are being given away for free on Facebook pages, but not so fast. We heard about this scam that it's actually described on a site called Snopes.com. And just as a side note, I love Snopes. I recommend it to a lot of people when I'm teaching security awareness. It's a great place to do a search if you're not sure if something is a scam or not, because they've got just about everyone kind of inventoried and the variations of them that are available. But these are pretty convincing ads that show up on Facebook just saying, dinner for two and dessert or whatever it is, or a drink. But it's interesting because it's got pictures of like the CEOs, except they're like 2 years past when they've retired. So it's not really the current CEOs. Just saying, sympathetic messages. Well, we sympathize with everybody, so we're offering this great deal. Come and get for everybody. Like, I'm not sure who's going to believe that, but I guess some will. In any case, don't click on these things.
No, absolutely not.
The result really is that you get to websites that have endless offers and fishy stuff and probably identity theft, right?
Worse.
The thing that I am amazed by is the sheer number of people who will argue with you when you point out it's a scam. Because I'm connected to a large number of people that I've seen share. The Chick-fil-A one is very, very popular. I've only seen the Olive Garden one a couple times. But the Chick-fil-A one is constantly, and they're like, "Oh man, yeah, this could be awesome." And you're like, "Hey, that's fake." And you referred to
them chicken sandwich, Kevin.
Yeah, well, man, I like the chicken sandwiches. Don't get me wrong, but you said that they're how did you phrase it? The realistic looking posts, and I would argue with you that they're not realistic looking, but I'd obviously be wrong because most people accept them as true.
Yes,
I read the post. I'm like, that's not true.
I didn't say they were realistic to me, but
No. That's what I'm saying is obviously they are realistic to people because they're very successful. They're publishing them all over the place, and people are like sharing them. And like I've like messaged people and said, "Hey, dude, that's not true," or "Hey, you're sharing something that's a scam," and I've had people get very angry at me. "No, Kevin, I called my chick." "No, you didn't. You didn't. You're lying. And I know you're lying, or your Chick-fil-A is stupid." I really, because they fell for it too.
I got a good one for you, Kevin. Do you remember when you and I used to work at McDonald's, and we were taught in the first day of training that if somebody came in with a coupon for anything, you honored it.
Oh yes. Totally.
Right?
I bet you that McDonald's doesn't have that rule for Facebook.
Probably not. That's right.
Definitely not.
Let's be very clear. Let me do the math. I started at McDonald's when I was 14, which would mean it was 1987. I don't know that Facebook was even a gleam in Mark Zuckerberg's parents' eye. I don't know what year he was born.
Or the Winklevi brothers or whatever.
I don't know. But I have a feeling that if Facebook existed when you and I were at McDonald's, that rule would have been different.
That's right. I think so. Anyways, so that's all great. So this segment has been brought to you by ClickArmor, the gamified security awareness program that fills the gap left by training and assessments. So you can't stay strong in defending security awareness against security threats like phishing and social engineering if you don't practice. It's like going once every 3 months to your dojo to spar with a black belt and hope you're going to learn something, which you're really
going to get your ass beat. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what ClickArmor provides now for improving the employees' ability to spot phishing and social engineering is our weekly challenges that provide an ideal, fun, and quick way to really exercise your skills. It's less than 3 minutes. In fact, we had one customer say, "I did the first one and it was like, holy smokes, that was fast," which is a great testimonial. But it was the best thing was the second message they got was the most effective because I realized that I got this last week and now I'm getting another one. And it's just reinforcing the stuff that I should have remembered and almost forgot, but now it's sticking with me. So the whole idea here of filling that gap between what the training and assessments provide is what we're trying to help people with. So come to clickarmor.ca, and right at the top of the page, you'll see a way you can register for a cool marketing initiative that we've got where you can experience it. It's called our 5-day challenge. So you can sign up for it, and Monday to Friday, you will get one message with a 3-minute exercise in it, and you get to see how that works and experience the fun of it. So
nice.
That's it from ClickArmor and our current installment of Aware Much.
I love the way Tom pronounces Aware Much.
Aware Much?
Yeah. Every time you say it, I giggle.
It's my broadcaster voice.
Yes, yeah. It's your.
That's why we picked the name.
Movie premieres.
That's right. Everything has a purpose, Kevin.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, we will let everyone go. But thank you again, Kevin and Scott, for all the great dialogue and commentary today with our stories. And I hope you guys celebrate St. Patrick's Day, in some small way. Maybe.
Oh, I didn't bring my bubbly, my green bubbly.
Oh, disappointing.
But it's not green.
But it's not green. So with that, we'll let everyone go. But thanks for listening, and talk to you all next week. That's all for this week's show. Visit our website, sharedsecurity.net, for all previous episodes and to sign up for our email newsletter. Looking for Shared Security merch? Be sure to check out our online store at store.sharedsecurity.net. Don't forget, you can always find us on Twitter at SharedSec, and please hit that like and subscribe button below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week for another episode of the Shared Security Show.